Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Roosevelt.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And if you're in class, I would say good morning. Good morning. Good. It's a beautiful morning. Platform guests, my colleagues, students, friends, especially my family, former distinguished professors, staff, everyone. Please know that I am deeply humbled by your recognition. And I'd like to begin by focusing your attention on time. Time. You see, the values which we assign to time communicate as powerfully as any language. So I was not surprised when my daughter, who's sitting over here, some of my friends, my colleagues, my family, my students, wanted to know, how long is your speech? How many pages? 12 point, you're wrong. Now this is really an important issue because I said that time communicates better, in my opinion, more powerfully than language, because the values which we assign to time really tells us a lot about you and me and other folk. So allow me, instead of extending that, to begin at the beginning. Several weeks ago, when Dr. Fleming informed me that I'd been selected as this year's distinguished professor, her notification was a pleasant surprise. She informed me that I would have the undivided attention of my colleagues in the general university community during this presentation and address. Now you have to know that several things immediately rushed through my mind and my body. Thing one, certainly was a feeling of significant relief, a chance to exhale. Thing two, I wondered if I would have a chance to fulfill one of my greatest professional ambitions, the chance to carry that big stick during spring commencement sessions. Thing three, did she say undivided? And finally, thing four was a recollection of a story which I heard several years ago, and I'd like to share it with you now. There were three academics, a physicist, an instructional theorist, and a historian. They're lined up before a firing squad. Now, it was common custom that when you were lined up before a firing squad that you died, and you were generally granted a last wish. The physicist says that his last wish would be to die happily, and the only way he could die happily is if he was allowed to read Diderot's The Evolution of Scientific Thought from Newton to Einstein. And he does read it, and he reads it passionately. As a matter of fact, he reads it so passionately that it brings tears to the eyes of the light. But they should be. Now, the theorist is inspired by this example of physicists. She expresses the desire to give an oral critique of Elliot Eisner's The Primacy of Experience and the Politics of Method. However, before she can get started, the historian jumps up and screams, "I want to be next! I have to be next! I will die happy," says the historian, "if I don't have to listen to one more lecture about how to teach." Now, that's a humorous story, and it's remained with me for some time, especially as I struggled with the topic for this address. What should I say? Do I dare prescribe strategies for improving instruction? Should I simply share my current research with you? Would you really even be interested? Should I avoid or should I embrace controversy? Should I try to be entertaining or should I try to be informative? Such questions continue to creep into my mind, only to race away like water dogs on the floor of a dark kitchen when you turn the lights on. Then, all of a sudden, it's as if by divine intervention, there it was. A sign. If everyone at KSU was just like me, what would this university be? Now, if you assume that this experience eliminated my anxiety, you're quite wrong. What the experience inspired was a flood of additional questions, questions which I felt were highly germane to Kentucky State University and our often cited uniqueness. Then last week, while in an elevator, I overheard a student graciously complimenting a past faculty member for exposing him to the concept of virgin books. Now, I didn't know what a virgin book was, but I struggled to put that content, that comment into context. So, through my method of logic and reasoning, I assumed the virgin book is a book that's infrequently read. You know the kind you see in the library that when you open it with that crackling sound. You know those books. The kind of books that when you see them on the shelves, they speak to you in an almost twilight zone voice. Choose me. Choose me. You know those books, don't you? So it recalled memories of an experience that I had with a virgin book. Because virgin books, in my impression and definition of the term, often have wonderful stories to tell. I eventually recalled the beckoning of such a book by Michael Polanyi and being both captivated and frustrated with many of Polanyi's propositions. I eventually pursued that beckoning to a tacit dimension, the book, not the place, where Polanyi details that there are things that we know, but we can't verbalize. He refers to these events as tacit knowing. And they include both formal knowledge and practical skills. Yes, I had a topic and I had a relevant context. Making it real, but compared to what? With a great deal of relief, I commended myself for selecting such a perfect compromise. I could be insightful, I could use insightful anecdotes, which were non-threatening to those who like the story, who would rather be shot now. And I could mix in a smattering of theoretical explication, thus ensuring myself my status as a serious scholar. Yes, I am. And good. That is until she did. Was she last? My wife. Couldn't wait to tell her, guess what? I finally decided on my topic for the address. I've got it and I think it's going to be wonderful. I shared with her my tremendous anxiety over this task, which had stayed with me for the past few weeks. And as a proud parent would do, I announced the arrival of the bona fide, bubbling, brown-eyed topic of compromise. Suddenly, through her interminable silence, I felt just like Joe Bickelstack. You know Joe Bickelstack from Neil Abner, with that eternal cloud, dark cloud of doom hovering over his head. This was not good. I thought as I waited for a response. And then it came. Why don't you simply get up, say thank you for this award, and sit down? Now you have to know that I highly respect my wife's opinion as both a pedagogue and as a scholar. My great compromise was re-compromise, and should you feel the urge to move to the beginning of the firing line, please blame my wife. Many of you will recall an activity that we engaged in during our fall planning conference, in which I attempted to solicit a preconceived response from you. I'd like to briefly review that activity if you didn't participate in it. Now, I'm a little hoarse today, so you got to forgive me and bear with me, but I'm going to try to sing anyway. Try to make it real. Try to make it real. Once again, this activity serves as a metaphor for the similar pitfalls which we experience daily in our classrooms. Attempted engagement with sporadic participation, asking questions which solicit improper response patterns. Regardless of how you classify it, something went wrong. What went wrong? Well, primarily we have a lack of shared knowledge, experience, and expectations. The result is a lack or a failure to communicate. For example, my statement regarding being a little hoarse. How many of you have heard that? It's a traditional signification. It means, okay, I'm going to sing. I'm not comfortable singing, but I hope you like it. But just in case you don't like it, shut up and cut me some slack. Also, some call response techniques represent cultural modes of discourse. That is, if I call, you gotta say something back. What you say perforce is highly dependent upon various factors: knowledge, experience, expectation. Now, I initially pursued this activity because I wanted to discover how common my own experiences and concerns were with regards to my colleagues. You might say, this type of occurrence is expected and highly relevant to a multicultural society, where various and sometimes diverse histories, customs, and cultural perspectives converge. But are our classrooms exempt from this confluence? The subsequent comments which I've received from both colleagues and students suggest that they are not. Those comments also suggest a general and persistent concern for identifying and acknowledging these various factors in an effort to effectively and artistically make our curricula real. We often read, hear, or even use the phrase, "the science of teaching." Likewise, teaching is often characterized as an art. As teachers, we are an evolving species. We are a work in progress, constantly evolving. Might we avoid the controversial either-or debate and simply acknowledge and agree that teaching involves artistic judgments that depend on science? By artistic teaching, I mean using and focusing on both repertoire and inventive. With artistic teaching, the outcomes of our well-intentioned and well-constructed instructional plans are emergent and not entirely preconceived nor pre-specified. It is far from a stuff happens approach or a go-with-the-flow approach. All of us, no doubt, view ourselves as professionals within this academy. We are, among other things, musicians, chemists, mathematicians, sociologists, accountants, nurses, biologists, historians, artists, linguists, and yes, library scientists. But do we always think of our teaching as professional activity? Do we always maintain a focused and trained eye to see what is actually happening and a trained mind to decide what to do next? I know that we have ample evidence of a systematic and scientific tradition, and most of us have greatly benefited from such educational perspectives as Bloom's domains, and especially his taxonomy of educational objectives. Likewise, we've been influenced by Ralph Tyler, and most of us conveniently describe our curricula in terms of objectives, learning experiences, organization of learning experiences, evaluation. However, artistic views of teaching, such as Postman and Weingartner's teaching as a subversive activity, James Herman's The Way It's Supposed to Be, and even, forgive me, Elliot Eisner's educational imagination, are inherently more suggestive and less standardized. Consider the following scenario. A friend of mine is an African-American professor at a Southern institution with a significant Native American population. Now, in acknowledgement of this fact, the faculty was required to attend a series of seminars which explored the cultural differences and factors that affected Native American students in colleges. My friend was initially taken aback by this requirement. After all, he was a member of a minority group and was certain that he understood the barriers which institutions traditionally or untraditionally, knowingly or unknowingly erect on campuses. Furthermore, he was an artist. And he had always been wholly committed to multicultural experiences within his classroom. He reluctantly attended the seminars and actually found them to be highly beneficial. For example, he found that Native people often are more aware of the body messages of professors, and sometimes will totally ignore the verbal messages being communicated because they're focusing on the body message. He also found that learning is encouraged in Native cultures through active exploration and experimentation. To surround these students with things, whether they're in a lab or nice toys, books, other utensils, or any tools, and then require them to have formal permission to touch them is not natural, nor is it very effective pedagogy. Learning is encouraged in Native cultures through active exploration. Being wrong can be very embarrassing. Going to the board before they master the concept to be critiqued by the professor and even students is a very embarrassing situation. It is an impediment to learning. From all indications, I believe my friend benefited from the seminars. However, while he feels the institution exhibited a bold commitment to diversity, he was troubled by many comments that he received from his colleagues. For example, they felt that the characteristics that might be a part of Native culture, but Native students need to learn how to be traditional students in a white culture, because that is where they will be employed. If native students are going to graduate from college and go on to grad school, they know they need to learn to be taught and learn from lectures. And if you're a minority culture, you need to fit into the majority culture, because if you meet the needs of the minority culture, for example, being flexible with time, doing assessments other than standardized, using delivery systems other than lecture, doing cooperative groupings, then you aren't using the learning methods that are most efficient with the majority culture, and you are wasting your time. A very common thing was my grandparents came over on the boat, and they were determined that my parents would become Americans and did not want them to speak the old language. They wanted them to do whatever they had to do to fit in to school and to learn. Why can't Native Americans do the same thing? Now, from all appearances, his colleagues truly believe that Native students must learn to assimilate into the dominant culture to be successful. It's okay to be an Indian at home. It's not okay to be one at school or at work, because the world simply does not work that way. One of the small pleasures of fatherhood is when my daughter Sarah says to me, "Okay, now let me get this straight." Her body-sinking, verbal tone, and inflection are all quite revealing of her high-context mode of communication. And I immediately recognize her attempts to compartmentalize and then to synthesize an experience for further use or further understanding. And as she sits there this morning, I can just hear her brain ticking. Okay, now let me get this straight. Students know much more than they can articulate. Students even know much more than our assessments reveal. Though it's a profession, teaching is both scientific and art, and exploration of the cultural differences that affect students is an excellent beginning point in any quest to make curricula real. Well, sort of, but perhaps Polanyi's tacit dimension might be better characterized as a hidden dimension. Also, I readily acknowledge the paradox associated with the term cultural. It remains a value-laden construct, which, when included in educational jargon, is often disguised as multicultural, multi-ethnic, or even diversity. As a concept, even anthropologists have difficulty defining the term. It was only first defined in 1871. However, it's long stood for the way of life of a people, their learned behaviors, and their material things, their stuff. But even today, it still lacks specificity. Interestingly, this disguise further morphs into a veritable cottage industry of concerns, such as how to teach to the motivational and learning characteristics of students who make up an increasingly diverse student population. Since culture is learned behavior and shared behavior, we might have a better grasp of teaching as art if we better understand how various people, i.e. cultures, learn. People reared in different cultures learn to learn in different ways: rote, memory, logic, demonstration. Some stress doing as a principle, while others have very little use for the pragmatic. Thus, one of the most significant challenges we face is to be tolerantly receptive and to recognize learning differences amongst our students. But then we're immediately faced with another challenge, because we conveniently attach other qualifiers to the term necessary for compartmentalization and within the larger construct of culture. Asian American, Chicano, Latino American, European American, grunge, hippie, drug, beatnik, black, African American. Now here's one that I like: mainstream, rap, pop, bebop, hip hop. You fill in the blank. You see, it is impossible for us to truly understand any culture except through prolonged experience. And even when we think that we understand it, it's impossible for us to communicate that understanding to someone who has not had the same experiences. Cultures are not one thing, but a complex series of interrelated activities with roots which lie buried deep in emotions, in intelligence, and yes, in histories. Certainly we can talk about the formal aspects of culture because they're obvious, visible, and easily described. But the informal aspects are difficult to verbalize because they're on the fringes of our experience and certainly on the fringes of our awareness. And yes, some classrooms seem more real than others. If we really want to consider cultural factors in our pedagogy, that is, if we really want to make our curriculum real, we must find out what is happening at that informal level. Put another way, artistic teachers are those who understand the importance of histories in learning how to learn and reconfiguring what one thinks one already knows. They affirm the presence and validity of those histories in creating instructional plans and classroom climates which are emergent rather than totally preconceived. Now, my comments are offered to you not in any prescriptive manner or purpose, and I hope that they arouse a shock of recognition, of feeling that, oh, I knew that all the time. But I do offer them in hope of engendering an active and understanding correspondence on these issues. Talking about these issues changes our relationship with them, freeing us from their restraints and bonds. You see, even now, I hear a song by Les McCann, challenging me. I hear the European keyboard. I hear the electric bass, the American drums, the African drums, the African-American jazz. And in closing, I revise one particular chorus and refrain of that song. Church on Sunday, sleeping now, trying to duck the wrath of God. Teachers filling us with fright. They all trying to teach us what they think is right. They really got to be some kind of nut. I can't use it. Trying to make it real, but compared to what? Thank you very much.
Thank you.